Inter-facility transport. They transport patients. They must be on contract. So IFT, they are on contract with the Interior Health Authority, which then also includes ICBC. You got your WorkSafe BC, and a bunch of other government. It's all one government contract for interior health. And it's just interesting what goes on in this parking lot here. See if you notice anything out of the ordinary. Hey there. One, two, three, four, all idling. Da-na-na-na. I just noticed something really funny about all these vehicles here.
Oh yeah.
How come all you guys are idling, and how long do you do this every day, you think?
It depends on when we get calls. So we get dispatched out of here. This is just kind of the spot.
Yeah, you're hanging out. Yeah, because you guys do ICBC, WorkSafe, on contract with Interior Health.
Yeah.
So you guys, you wait for calls and then transport between hospitals?
Yeah.
I just do the news and I just came across these things. I'm like, what is IFT? So I had to look it up.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but okay, so it's so funny because the government, authoritarian government Trudeau, is all about emissions now. And just like the Netherlands farmers protest, reduce nitrogen by 30% before 2030, which is impossible. All the farmers lose their land.
Yeah.
And then how come you guys don't turn your vehicles off? I don't really care, but the fact is like what's going on with the government. They're all pro. They're all.
AC.
Well, yeah, okay, but it's not hot today.
No, it's not.
No, but you guys would do this every day. Obviously, in the winter, it's going to be cold. You have to keep heat.
Yeah.
Because there's no actual building you guys can go and wait for.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, just getting the news.
Okay.
Thanks. Cheers. Yeah, guys. So government, pro-government, emission, yet government contract vehicles just idle all day long. Just to add to this, the government pushes no idle zones. They're pushing all these electric cars, and then their own governments, individuals, nobody gives a shit. The emissions, it's all bullshit, really. I mean, yes, we understand we create emissions, but the battery electric cars, you got the cobalt mining by mostly the Communist Party, just wrecking the lives of Africans. All of the mines are in Africa, and people get paid $1 a day to die or be in a hole in nearly terrible working conditions, right? Just again, blood diamonds, blood cobalt for all these lithium batteries. And then how do you charge these lithium batteries, which also can't be recycled, and they don't last more than 10 years. 5 really, I would say, would be the most reasonable. Look at your phone. You need a new battery every year to every 2 years, freaking all the time, because you use it on the daily, right? You use your car on the daily, the batteries, they have issues. And then how do you charge them? Well, charge them with gasoline, coal. The US is just full coal mines. We're not even in Canada, we don't even use our own energy, so everybody's getting oil and energy from Saudi Arabia, from Russia, etc. Why don't we have control of that here? Why don't we open up our own pipeline? Why don't we use our own natural resources? Because we clearly are going to have, look at all over the states, blackouts. They're going to have blackouts in California, and they have all these because too many people are charging their electric cars already, and then they mandated electric cars. What was it, by 2050, only electric cars? Or was it 2040? It doesn't matter, it's all ridiculous. And of course, recent news, the Nord Stream pipeline being sabotaged, blown up, and now that's where all the emissions come right out of the pipeline into the Baltic Sea. Now, and who had reason to do this? Who actually announced they even did it on the air?
It is true that blowing up Nord Stream does not help Vladimir Putin. He would not do that. Why would he? But that doesn't mean that other countries wouldn't consider doing it. They would consider it, and we know they have considered it because at least one of them has said so in public. In early February, less than 3 weeks before the war in Ukraine began, Joe Biden suggested on camera that he might take out these pipelines. Watch.
If Russia invades, that means tanks or troops crossing the the border of Ukraine again, then there will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it.
How will you do that exactly, since the project and control of the project is within Germany's control?
We will, I promise you, we'll be able to do it.
Joe Biden.
And yet, in retrospect, it's obvious they were thinking about this because Joe Biden wasn't the only person to suggest it. Toria Nuland at the State Department said pretty much the very same thing. Nuland is a lifelong war cheerleader. She worked to bring about the Iraq invasion, never apologized, kept going. She helped engineer the coup that overthrew the Ukrainian government some years back. So clearly she's capable of anything. But environmental terrorism, even for Toria Nuland, that seemed too much, too extreme. And yet here she is in January.
With regard to Nord Stream 2, we continue to have very strong and clear conversations with our German allies, and I want to be clear with you today. If Russia invades Ukraine, one way or another, Nord Stream 2 will not move forward.
So Joe Biden cares about emissions? No. Now they're purposely sabotaging a pipeline and creating the most emissions possible today.
One way or the other, we'll stop Nord Stream. Now, looking back, those words seem chilling 8 months later as natural gas pours into the Baltic Sea and into the atmosphere. So you have to ask, could the Biden administration really do something like this? We can't say for sure. We don't know for sure. We can tell you that close allies of the Biden White House believe they certainly did do it. Radek Sikorski is a Polish politician. He's chairman of the EU-USA delegation in the European Parliament. He's connected. He's also the husband of regime stenographer Ann Applebaum of The Atlantic magazine. Sikorski is so close to Joe Biden that he's got a picture of the two of them together in his Twitter profile. So when the pipelines blew up, Sikorski responded immediately, and here's what he wrote. "Thank you, USA." So once again, did the Biden administration really do this? It's hard to believe. Given that it's an atrocity, it's effectively an act of terrorism, we don't want to make that accusation. But we should tell you that, maybe not coincidentally, today a brand new pipeline was unveiled, a pipeline that carries non-Russian natural gas in roughly the same area as Nord Streams 1 and 2. This is called the Baltic Pipe. It was inaugurated in Poland. It will carry natural gas from Norway through Denmark to Poland and other countries nearby. And it's likely to do very well since now it has less competition. Making sense? What does the White House say about this? How are they accounting for what happened today? Well, they're not exactly enthusiastically denying responsibility for it. Instead, they're looking at the upside. Here's the president's publicist noting that the destruction of yet another energy pipeline is yet another opportunity for you to buy an electric car.
As you all know, these pipelines weren't pumping gas into Europe at this time. NS2 was never operational, as you guys know. NS1 has not been operational for weeks because Putin has weaponized energy, and we have said this many times before. This just drives home the importance of our efforts to work together to get alternative gas supplies to Europe and to support efforts to reduce gas consumption and accelerate true energy independence by moving to clean energy economy.
Oh, moving to clean energy, say the people who very may well be responsible for letting methane into the Baltic Sea and into the atmosphere at a scale that most people can't imagine. The people lecturing you about your SUV may have blown up a natural gas pipeline and created one of the great catastrophes of our time in its effect on the environment. If they did this, this will be one of the craziest, most destructive things any American administration has ever done. But it would also be totally consistent with what they do. What do? They destroy. These people build nothing, not one thing. Instead, they tear down and they desecrate, from historic statues to the Constitution to energy infrastructure. And no one in Congress is trying to stop any of it. They're just preparing for the inevitable fallout. Tonight, the Senate just advanced a spending bill with $35 million for the Department of Energy to, quote, prepare for and respond to potential nuclear and radiological incidents in Ukraine. What? The spending bill also brings the total U.S. expenditure on Ukraine, the war, but also funding its government and energy for Ukraine, to $67 billion on the eve of what could be a massive economic disruption. Here, to our economy, $67 billion. How much is that? Well, it's more than Russia's entire military budget last year. And Congress is expected to fully pass the bill later this week, with Republicans nodding along like the zombies they are. What will be the effect of this? Every action has a reaction, equal and opposite. Blow up the Nord Stream pipelines? Okay, we've entered a new phase, one in which the United States is directly at war with the largest nuclear power in the world. Doesn't mean it'll go nuclear immediately, but it does suggest there could be consequences. If we actually blew up the Nord Stream pipelines, why wouldn't Russia sever undersea internet cables? What would happen if they did that? What would happen if banks in London couldn't communicate with banks in New York? Just that one piece of it, leaving aside its potential effects on our power grid. But let's just say the banks couldn't communicate with each other for one day. What would the economic effect of that be? Oh, it would cascade downward into your house. We could have an actual collapse. We could wind up very quickly in third world conditions. Those are the stakes. Have the people behind this, the geniuses like Toria Nuland, considered the effects? Maybe they have. Maybe that was the point. Subscribe to the Fox News YouTube channel to catch our nightly opens, stories that are changing the world and changing your life. From Tucker Carlson tonight.